I felt this overwhelming, unconditional, pure love coming from this that permeated every part of me. And it felt like it just flowed through me. If you can imagine being next to a waterfall on a really hot summer day, you just get under the waterfall for that quick minute and you feel that nice cool water just flow over you. Multiply that by infinity. And that's how this love felt going through me. Like I didn't want it to stop. I never wanted it to end. There is nothing that any being in the universe can do to not be loved by this being. So there is no hell for those who think there is, and you're wrong. Sorry. I've been there. And I've seen the area that some people who have near death experiences say they've seen hell. I've seen the area that they're referring to as hell. It's not. It looks like it. It feels like it. It's not. Because it's an area where you go by your own choice and you can leave it just as quickly.
These videos answer a lot of questions about why we're here, but I'm guessing you still have a few of your own. So join me for Wake Up Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern, where I'll answer your questions live. And I might even have a few surprise guests show up. Together, we're waking up the collective. Thank you for watching. My guest today is Andrew Bauer, who had two near-death experiences. So, Andrew, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too, especially because the reason that we're talking today is because a couple of weeks ago, I had my friend Ned on the show who runs a Facebook group that has 300,000 NDE members. And one of the questions I asked him was, what is one of the standout NDEs that you've heard? And he's heard thousands of them, and
Mm-hmm.
yours was his number one. And I feel very blessed that we got you scheduled to come on the show and to share this experience with us today. So thank you.
I'm always glad to do this. It's so much fun.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and dive into it. You had a near death experience when you were only 7. So let's start right there.
All right. So, as you said, I had my first one at 7, and this was caused by a really major virus, which, to my knowledge, was never fully identified. If it was after the fact. It affected, I think, several dozen children under the age of 16 around the area of Western Massachusetts, where I grew up, and Eastern New York. And I think of the 5 or 6 dozen kids that were affected, about half of them went home within the first 48 hours. My brother was one of those. And the rest of us stayed in the hospital anywhere from 48 hours to almost a month. And of those, maybe 2 to 3 dozen that were in the hospital and stayed, uh, let's say 13 of us ended up in comas of varying lengths, anywhere from a couple days to 2 or 3 weeks. And of those 13, 5 died during the coma. And of those 5, I'm the only one we managed to bring back. So as far as I'm aware, I'm the only one of that bunch who had a near-death experience because I'm the only one who was able to come back from the other side. And uh, I will say that as a 7-year-old, I did not have any concept of death. I had never, in fact, my first relative didn't die till I was 19. My first experience with death was at 12 when my best friend at the time was killed by a drunk driver in front of me. Um, but I had no concept of what death meant at that point in my life. And so what happened is I was in a coma for 5 days. And on day 5, uh, I experienced what's called septic shock, which is basically, septicemia is where, things are starting to, your bodily organs are starting to be severely affected. When it moves into septic shock, it's where you start having organs shut down. And so by day 5, the only organs I had left were my heart, lungs, and brain. And within an hour of each other, the heart and lungs shut down first, and then less than an hour later, the brain followed them. And so I was on, they had me on a PET scanner, well, not PET scan, but they had wires all over my head, and of course, the normal heart monitors all over my chest and sides, and so everything flatlined is what I understand. My grandmother was the one who was with me. My parents unfortunately had to stay home because of taking care of my brother, and my father had to work to pay the bills. So my grandmother, being retired at the time, decided to come and stay with me. So she was shuffled out of the room immediately. Um, and the code blue team came running in. And I remember there was one doctor who was kind of in charge of everybody. He stood at the foot of my bed, and just so you know, I'm watching this from outside my body, because as soon as my brain flatlined, I was gone. I was dead, clinically dead as far as they were concerned. And I was immediately up in the back corner of the hospital room, where in fact where the TV was. I was literally, I could, if I was in my body, I could have reached over and touched it. So that's where I was. And so I could see the doctor from behind and above, and the team of 2 on one side, 3 on the other side, working on me under his direction. And I remember specifically that this guy had a bald spot in the back of his head, and he did this comb over thing, left to right, where, to comb over the bald spot, like a lot of vain men tend to do. And when I came back, just as a quick note, I remember I asked the nurse, I said, "Who's the doctor with the bald spot?" And she said, "Well, I'm not exactly sure," but I said, and because I said I wasn't somebody I was used to seeing before I went into my coma, and so it wasn't part of my normal care team, so to speak. And she brought a guy in after a few minutes and said, "Is this the one you saw?" And I said, "I'm not sure. Can you bend over?" He thought it was kind of a weird suggestion or weird question, but he bent over, and I saw the bald spot on his head, and I said, "Yeah, that's him." So that kind of freaked the nurse out a little bit, because you're talking about 1978. Near-death experiences were very rarely talked about at that point in history. There were studies going on, but they were mostly done on the down low, where people just, like scientists, if you were a legitimate scientist, you didn't talk about near death experiences because they were lumped in with, like, using crystals for healing, or, uh, new age hoodoo, so to speak. And so they were mostly, that's why so many people who come from my era of near death experiences tend to describe being not believed for the most part, or not knowing anybody else who had an experience like ours, because they just weren't, nobody talked about them. But anyway, the nurse was a bit freaked out. She actually, when I understand later on, asked to be removed from my team because she didn't quite know how to handle what I'd seen or what I described, because being outside your body is not exactly an everyday experience for even for medical staff. So anyway, as soon as I was up in the corner of the room, I remember thinking, I was panicking inside, and what's going on, and I remember thinking, I'm up here. This is like, because whatever I was used to the idea of wherever the brain is, wherever I'm thinking at, that's me. That's where I am, wherever that happens. And as freaky as it was being up on the ceiling, at least I could say that's me. So who's the person on the bed? Who am I watching? Because I didn't know that was myself. And it wasn't until one of the doctors said, come on back, Andy, come on back, stay with us," that I realized it was me. And that really freaked me out. Like, I would, if I'd been in the body, I probably would have had a panic attack. And at that point, I heard this really calming voice, and I've tried to describe it to people. The only way I can describe it is imagine someone speaking a Romance language like Italian at the same time that they're singing. Almost it's like a sing. I call it sing-songy. Is the way I describe it. But it's the most calming, beautiful voice I have ever heard to this day. And I always tell people I wish I could record him speaking because it would be the best ASMR video on the internet. You know, it just, I mean, it would put you right out to sleep just listening to his voice, like, you know. But anyway, I found out later this was my guide, and he was speaking to me, and his voice immediately calmed me down. And he said, "You're okay. You know, where you are, you can't be harmed. You're experiencing death, but it will not harm you." And I thought that was kind of a weird way of putting it because I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know what death was. But um, as soon as I saw a little bit of the scene, I remember him saying, there's something else you need to see now. You need to come with us." And I felt my spirit or my soul, whatever you want to call it, being pulled out through that corner of the ceiling, through the building. Like, and I could see the building coming, or, like going by on both sides of me, like almost like someone trying to phase through a wall. It's like that. Like I could see like the wood and the stone and everything going by me in both directions. And I thought that was really strange. And next thing I know, I was out in the night sky, and I was at least a couple thousand feet up. I don't even know how high I was, but I remember I could see my hometown, which was only like 50 some thousand people at the time. It's about, it was a small, basic, almost a city. And I remember thinking, like, where's my house? That was my first thought. I was trying to get my bearings, I think. And immediately my vision went straight to my house, and I zoomed in where it was like I could reach out and touch it. It was that close, and the detail was so vivid that even in real life, I've never seen anything where it felt like you could reach out and touch every single atom of the matter that it was made out of. And I realized that no matter what I focused on, whether like the ski area that I grew up skiing on, or the playground I hung out at, which is Clapp Park in Pittsfield. If for those who live there, you might be familiar with Clapp Park. Um, but wherever it was, I could immediately my vision would jump to it. It didn't matter what direction it was in. My vision was 360. There was no. It wasn't like that. It was 360 vision, up, down. It didn't matter what direction it was in. My vision could go anywhere I wanted it to go instantly. And like I said, the detail was so incredibly sharp that I have never seen anything that can represent even come close to copying it, even now with today's technology. And as soon as I got up to a certain point, um, I remember everything went black for a quick second. And then the next thing I knew, I was waking up in this room, or what looked like a room, and I was laying on a bed. And it was the most comfortable bed I've ever been in. And I remember as I was looking around, everything around me was made of this bluish green energy. And if anybody has seen the newer, not the Tron movie that just came out, but the remake or whatever you want to call it that came out a few years ago, the energy looked like it was alive and malleable, like it could bend, and if you tried to touch it, you could feel like there was a barrier between you and it, but it would just kind of it would react to your touch. And but remember, it's always this blue green color, and I what my guide called it later on was potential energy. And it's I don't know if it's the same as what you might find in physics, but what it means to them is this energy is everywhere, and on the other side, whatever you need or want is created instantly from this energy. It's always in its potential state, waiting for whatever is needed, whether it's a room or like my little pocket universe that I created later on, or simply whatever you want to create. It doesn't matter how big, how small, how detailed, how simple. Everything is created from this ether, and like I said, whenever it's not in use, it reverts to that same potential energy state where it's waiting for the next use. And so this room it felt like this space was just kind of enclosed, but it was just separate from everything else around us, where it was just me and my guide. And I remember I couldn't see him when I was still on Earth, when I was still, even in my spirit form, I couldn't see him when I was still on Earth. The minute I blacked out and came to in that room, I could see him. And he took on the guise. Like there's two ways we appear on the other side. One is what I tend to call the residual self-image, after the term from the Matrix movies, where it's the perfect version of the way we see ourselves from our most recent incarnation. So like not me as I am right this second, but like me if I was had the perfect body, the perfect age, perfect condition, everything was perfect in my mind. So that's the version you see when you have a near-death experience. If you see like your relatives, you don't see them as old or decrepit or sick in bed or dying of cancer. You see them in their perfection, because there's no disease, there's no injury, there's uh, no harm on the other side. It's perfect, and so all that stuff can't exist there. And the other version of us that we have is what's called the energy-based being. That's the being that is inside of all of us. When we incarnate in a body, we first attach through the solar plexus area, what some people might call the heart chakra, um, and then from there, the being spreads out and connects to everything else. That's why it takes us several years to acclimate to our body. That's why we have to crawl before we can walk before we can run. Why we're uncoordinated for a long time till we get finished growing. It takes several years for the body to adjust, to get fully grown, and for the being inside to get used to where things are, where my body is in space. And so once you're fully connected, that's the other version, is when you disconnect. Like near death experience, you're still partly connected to your body. Um, it's a really thin tether, but it doesn't. It's not a specific length. It can stretch as far as it needs to. The body, like the energy-based being, has no limits. It's only our body that has limits. And but when you fully die, when you actually leave this plane of existence, leave your body and go to the other side and stay there, the last, the first place you connect is the last place to disconnect. So your solar plexus is the last connection to go, and uh, the residual energy from your energy-based being is why a lot of people at the very end, right before they pass away, will see like visions of people coming to greet them. They'll see uh, just past the veil to the other side. They'll see the light coming. Like they're getting ready to go towards the light. There's just that last little bit of connection to the brain, and you're just able to see that right before you leave. So that's why a lot of people, when they die, right in the last few seconds, you'll see them smile, and I tell you, as someone who's seen this twice, it is the most amazing sight you will ever see. And there's nothing you could describe it. I could describe it till I'm blue in the face. I could draw a million pictures. I could have AI create something. Nothing will ever come close to what I saw. Nothing will ever come close to what any of us see. So anyway, once I was on the other side, they this room is called the Acclimation Room. It's where you adjust to the fact that you're dead. Um, for each person, it's different. Near-death experiences are tailored to the individual. If you're a Christian, say, or a Muslim, or a Buddhist, or an atheist, you would not believe an experience if it was matched up with someone else's mindset. Like if you're a Christian, you wouldn't believe a scientific uh, near-death experience. If you're an atheist, you wouldn't believe a Christian one. So you have to be able to accept that you're dead and that you're okay. And so they tailor the NDE to your mindset so that you are able to accept that right away. And so I didn't have that mindset yet at 7. Even at 14, I was still kind of back and forth on that whole spirit thing as far as like what I believed, what I didn't believe. I knew that what I saw in church didn't match what I felt, especially when I came back from my near death experiences. It felt completely alien to me. And uh, but yeah, it doesn't matter. Like I say, whatever type of mindset you have, the NDE is tailored to you. And once I acclimated to being on the other side, my guide my guide had two other beings with him who both had human guises to them. Like they appeared like he appeared as the being he was, which is not human. His last incarnation was actually on a planet on the other side of the galaxy from us, and his system is not visible from our perspective because of all the the light and the gas and dust and everything else between us and that side of the galaxy. That's why our instruments can't see that. But anyway, so that's the system he's from, is the other side of the galaxy. And his species came from a different planet where the gravity level was very low compared to Earth, maybe even less than our moon, even though the planet itself was bigger size wise than Earth by quite a bit. Uh, the mass of it was very low. And so they were about 9 to 10 feet tall, dark bluish gray skin, no hair, no fur, nothing like that. Really big heads, but the most kind eyes I've ever seen in a being, where you instantly felt like you were loved the second you looked them in the eye. And their entire torso area was translucent, where you could see through it, and their inner being, their energy based being, was visible in this form, where it emanated this bluish white light all around where they were. It was like you remember if you've ever seen the movie E.T. when his heart light would grow red. Well, imagine that being bluish white, and that's kind of how they were all the time. And so um, I thought like his species was really interesting to me, still is. Um, the other two were human, or at least their last incarnation was human. They appeared to me as human. And what I learned is that each guide, when they've had a lot of experience being one, they tend to take on apprentices who learn how to become the best kind of guide to people transitioning or beings transitioning to the other side. And so they're assigned to a an experienced guide who teaches them how to become one. And so that's what these two were. That's why they never spoke to me, but they always kind of like would nod whenever something was said or asked, and they would smile now and then, but they just kind of were there. They were furniture as far as I was concerned. They weren't part of the conversation. But anyway, so once I I remember asking a lot of questions at first, like what's going on, where am I, what, and once he told me I was dead, like what does death mean? Is it, am I gone? Period. Is this where I'm staying for the rest of my life? Like, is this my room now? Like, what's going on? I mean, being 7, you're trying to get your bearings, and he explained very patiently, asked answer all my questions. But I realized very early on that when I tried to verbalize questions, I couldn't. And he told me, but I realized after a few seconds that his mouth wasn't moving, and he was talking to me, but I heard his voice inside my head. And he said, "You don't have to try to speak. You don't have a body anymore. You don't have a mouth or a tongue or vocal cords. It's just your spirit." And he said, "You don't need that body to speak anymore where you are now." And I realized he was speaking to me telepathically, which I didn't have a word for then. I had it by the time I got to my second one, though. And he told me that he kind of showed me how it worked, and I took to it right away. It's like it wasn't like for me, it wasn't like learning something that new that I had never done before. It was like remembering something I always knew how to do, but it just forgotten temporarily. And I explain that as way everything is there, because this is where we come from and return to in between every single lifetime. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what planet you're from. This is where we go in between lifetimes. This is where we go to process what we've been through, figure out like what do I want to do in my next lifetime, set up everything. It's where we do everything, and so it's kind of like our, like if you have an experience and you're like, okay, I need to sit back and, oh, well, that was pretty cool. Let's see, what do I want to do next? That's your other side, and then you go back and live another lifetime where you do something else. So, so anyway, he basically answered all my questions, and then he said there's another experience that we need to have right now, and he says it's called a life review, and I had no idea what that was, and I asked him, and he said you will basically be able to see and feel everything that you said or did in this lifetime, both from your perspective and the perspective of others that you have spoken to or done things to. And I didn't think much of it at the time because 7 years old. Hey, I'm hearing all sorts of new stuff today, you know. But he led me to this pod in a different part of like this. I could see everything kind of forming as we walked up towards it, and it was like a long pod. It looked like this mix of plastic and metal. It's hard to describe, but almost like a composite material to me. It was silvery in color, and it looked like almost like it would give to you if you touched it. Didn't look like it was that solid, like steel or something like that, like metal would look. It looked like a composite material, like it was a mix of stuff. But anyway, I got into this pod, and immediately I felt tingling, kind of in the back of, well, not my head, but it kind of felt like it was back here. If I'd had a body, it would have felt like it was back here. And next thing I knew, I was reliving my birth, the first few years of my life, basically everything from when I was born until the point where I had the near death experience. And there wasn't much to it. I hadn't really done anything bad. The only, if you want to call it bad thing I'd ever done, when I was 5, my cousin, who was a year older than me, he had this Matchbox car that I remember thinking was really cool. Turns out it was an exact same model and color as the car his father drove, and so it was a gift from his father to him on his birthday, and for him it was really special because it was like he could drive his little car while his dad was driving the real thing. And me, I just saw a cool looking little car. It was like a Pontiac Firebird, I think it was, and it was fire engine red. with the yellow stripe, look like the yellow flames down the side. And I thought that was cool. 5 years old, you think everything that's really colorful looks cool. So I took it home with me, not even thinking, that's his. I just thought, hey, it's a cool thing. I want to check it out. Well, what I didn't see or understand was what things were like for him after he discovered this was missing. He was crying, his eyes out. He had trouble sleeping. He was inconsolable for several days. His mother was trying to console him. His dad was trying to console him. Mommy, where's my car? I can't find my car. Where's my car? And I remember feeling so bad about having taken his car. And I remember like when I came back and I got acclimated to being back on Earth again, the very first thing I wanted to do was go give him that car back because I couldn't stand having it 1 second longer. And when I gave it back to him, he was so overjoyed. He didn't even blame me for it. In other words, nor did his parents. He was just so happy to have it back that for him it was just like, and for me it was like a weight was lifted off of me. Even at 7, I felt this weight on me. Like I have to get this weight off me. The only way to do that is to bring back what I took. And so anyway, so I saw that, and after the life review was over, my guy told me, if you want to look around, you can. You can do whatever you want now. Um, you have no obligation to be anywhere. You can do anything. And I remember thinking, um, I just want to relax for a while. And the next thing I knew, I blacked out for a second again, like I did coming out of the body, out of Earth realm. And next thing I knew, I was waking up in this field of multicolored wildflowers. And as I looked around me, I remember way I was lying down. Um, Past my feet was a cabin, looked like an older cabin. I mean, like really old to me. I mean, didn't look like it was something modern. And to my right, the mountain, it was a really steep mountain. It sloped up to the right. There was like a rocky outcropping about maybe a couple hundred feet above me. It sloped down very steeply to my left. There was a valley below me with a bunch of pine trees and like deciduous trees, a bunch of small lakes and ponds. And then there was another mountain range that paralleled the one that I was on directly across from me. And so the two lines went off into the distance in front of me, and where they tapered off, right in the middle of that, was this mountain that had a very specific look to it. And I couldn't, I remembered the mountain because when I came back, I remember I drew it over and over again. It was like my brain was obsessed with this mountain. The vision, like the visual, like if you've ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Richard Dreyfuss with his drawings and paintings and trying to create the Devil Tower in Wyoming, trying to figure out what this thing was. That was me. And my grandmother saw it one day, and she said that looks awfully familiar. And she went at the time we didn't have the internet or Google or anything like that. We had an Encyclopedia Britannica and a library card. That was the extent of our Google in 1978. But she went and got her encyclopedia and she started flipping through the section on Europe, and she came across this photo. And she came back and showed me, and she said, "Is this what you saw?" And I said, "Yeah, that's it. That's my mountain." And now she was describing this to me later on. I don't remember this conversation, because I don't remember anything from probably for several months after the experience. So everything I got secondhand through my parents or my grandmother. And what she said what she was showing me was the Matterhorn in Switzerland, and because it had this very specific angled top on it, that's what gave it away. It looked like a pyramid, like a four-sided pyramid up to a point, and then there was a slanted top on it. And so I realized at this point, like, why was I in Switzerland? Like, I had never heard of Switzerland. I mean, we weren't at the point. I hadn't even started first grade yet. I was actually in a gifted class for 2 years prior to this. Um, because I had a very high IQ. When, in fact, when I was 16, both my mother and I went and took the entrance test to join Mensa, which is an international group for people with an IQ over 130. I think that's their entrance level. Like you have to have at least that IQ to enter and become a member. She was at 138, and at the time I was at closer to 160. And I think mine went down over time because of head injuries and other things, but it's still above 130. It's like mine's at like 140 something now. I think 145. But anyway, so I was in this gifted class for 2 years, and even with that, we hadn't really delved into world geography, or I didn't know anything outside of my small hometown. We had been to New York once when I was 5, because that was the year that we had the bicentennial in 1976, and the World Trade Center, the original one, had just been built 3 years before that. It just opened to the public, I think, the year before. So you're talking about 1975, 1974, somewhere in that range. So they took me. That was my first experience with a building over 7 stories tall. Was going to the top of the World Trade Center South Tower, putting my head against the glass and looking at these little tiny cars that were about the size of an ant, 1,300 feet down. And I think it gave me a bit of a phobia of heights for a few years after that. Actually had to spend a little bit of time overcoming it. Um, but other than that one experience in New York, I had never been outside my hometown. I didn't know anything really outside of that little bubble world that I was in. I mean, at 7 years old, you don't do a lot of world traveling unless you're rich. So anyway, so I had no idea what Switzerland was. I had no idea where it was. She had to show me on like one of those little spinning globes, like where Switzerland was in Europe, and I still didn't have any concept of how far away it was. I mean, you're talking about 6,000 miles, give or take, between where I grew up and where Switzerland is. But I had no idea what a mile was. I had no idea how far away it was. I just knew it wasn't here. And so this place that I woke up in was a recreation of this place that I found out later I had spent an entire lifetime in. Um, it was of my This is now my fourth what they call Earth-based lifetime. And I know I've had at least a few others beyond that with other planets in this galaxy, and I don't know about before that, but I'm quite sure that my life experience goes back way beyond that. I know at least 3 planets that I've lived on other than Earth, and I know where 2 of them are. I've actually drawn. I had a map of the galaxy, and I figured out where they were based on where other things were. So anyway, like I said, I didn't know where Switzerland was. I didn't know anything about it. So how was I seeing this? How was I creating this with my mind? I'm seeing this beautiful mountain and sun overhead and clouds over all this pink and orange and purple and red above me and mountains over here, a big old cabin in front of me. I remember it had a porch on the backside it was framed. The visual was framed by a couple of big trees in the backyard, and right in between them you could see the Matterhorn, and it was like this beautiful scenic view, like a postcard. And I was like, where did this? I remember thinking for years, where does this visual come from? Like, as I've obviously I've never been there, I've never seen it, I've never even seen a picture of it. So where did this come from? Like, did someone feed it to me? Where did it come from? And it wasn't until my second life, or second NDE, I should say, that I found out from a separate life review that I had that I saw my first Earth-based lifetime was spent in Switzerland, and it was my version of a perfect life. And so every time I think of the perfect place, the place I want to be the most, where my spirit, my soul want to go the most, it's there. So that's my little pocket universe. That's what I call it. And after a while being there. I remember I could control everything around me, just like thinking, oh, I wish the sun would stay up a little bit longer, and it stopped. And it was a different looking sun than we're used to seeing on Earth. It wasn't like you normally would see it. It looked like, if you're familiar with what an aster is, Aster,
A
it's
flower? The
it's
flower?
kind of like, yeah, and that's kind of named after the shape, which is kind of like, if you can imagine a ball of light with really thin rays going off in every direction as far as you can go. That's kind of what an aster shape is, and that's the way the sun appeared to me. And I found out wherever I went, this ball of light was always with me. When I went elsewhere, it was with me. And I found out later that this was what I call source. Some people call God or creator, or whatever you choose to call this being, doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't, it's not assigned to a name any more than it is anything else. I call it source because it's the source of all love, the source of all matter and energy in the universe, the source of everything. So anyway, that's I felt this overwhelming, unconditional, pure love coming from this that permeated every part of me, and it felt like it just flowed through me, almost like, if you can imagine being, next to a waterfall on a really hot summer day, and you're sweating, you're uncomfortable, and you just get under the waterfall for that quick minute, and you feel that nice cool water just flow over you, and that wonderful, beautiful feeling. Multiply that by infinity, and that's how this love felt going through me. Like I didn't want it to stop. I never wanted it to end. I didn't want to go anywhere, be where this light was, where this love was. And I could stop it in the sky, and I could move the clouds around. I could shape them however I wanted to. I remember seeing clouds shaped like different animals. I remember I wanted to create an animal, so it all of a sudden appeared in the sky. And finally, I let the sun set behind it. It set right behind the Matterhorn, and because that was west from where my cabin was. And so, um, as the sun set, I remember the stars came out, but they weren't like we see them here, like just little two-dimensional pinpricks of light that are, who knows how far away. Like we look at Orion and we think they're all the stars in Orion are the same distance from us. They're not. I mean, there's like the three stars in Orion's belt. The middle one is like 1,200 light years further away from us than the other two. You know, it's not even close to them. It's just because it's so big and bright is why it looks like it's the same distance, but it's actually not. Um, yeah, I can talk about Orion all day. It's one of my favorite constellations. But anyway, um, the stars in this place were different. They were like these big, beautiful balls of light, almost like if you can imagine a glow stick, but shaped like a big ball, um, in different colors. They were red or orange or yellow or bluish white or whatever the case might be, and they were everywhere. It was like the sky was full of them. And I remember I was just laughing because it was so amazing that I couldn't imagine anything more cool, and like, how am I here? That feeling washed over me, like, how am I here? This is such a cool place. And I remember I reached out and I could touch these balls of light and bring them down to me, and I could throw them around and watch them bounce all down the valley below me and bounce off the cabin in front of me. And it was like being at a Jimmy Buffett concert, but multiplied by infinity. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I remember as they started pulling some of the stars down, and the night got a little bit darker. As the darkness kind of got deeper, I could start to see these filaments of light. And I've got a picture I'll post later on that is the closest thing to it that I've ever seen. It was like this pinkish purple color, these filaments, and they connected everything, me to everything around me to everything else. It was like this spider web that filled the universe, and all these filaments connected everything, and they were all this pinkish purple color, and it was like being in a web made of energy. And I remember that every time I touched one of these filaments, I felt like I was supercharged. Like the energy in me was linking with the energy in the filaments, and they were like bouncing off of each other and basically building up as they went. And the other thing I noticed was the flowers around me as being different colors. Every color on the other side has a frequency of sound to it. And so these multicolored wildflowers, like red and blue and purple and pink and white and yellow, every color of the crayon box all around me, it sounded like a heavenly chorus. And it wasn't until just a few months ago, somebody I saw posted a video. It was a little clip from Facebook, and I found this woman's channel. It's a Japanese woman. I think her name is Meilan. She might be, well, she might be Korean, actually, not Japanese. I'm sorry. But her name is Meilan, Mei-Lan. She has a channel on Facebook. She has a channel on YouTube. And she does this thing where she mixes singing bowl sound with music and her own voice doing like and ah and an echo effect overall that makes it sound like this universal chorus. It's the only sound that comes even close to what I heard in this place. And it was coming from everything. I felt like I was at the coolest concert I'd ever seen or ever would see, bouncing balls of light everywhere I looked, um, and filaments of purplish pink light everywhere, and I could touch them and link to them. And it was someplace like I wanted to stay here forever and never leave it. And the only thing that could draw my attention away was as I remember looking out where the stars were, I remember thinking just briefly, I wish I could be where they are. And the next thing I knew, I was. I was like, you remember this visual behind me in our chat? Imagine being there and seeing this in person. That's what I experienced. I had never seen the Earth from outside, and I remember later on seeing a description from I think one of the Apollo 17 astronauts of what it was like to see Earth from the outside for the first time, and how amazing that view is, and how it felt like there was no lines, there was no divisions between countries. It was all one world. And that's how it felt to me, like everything there is connected. It was this glowing bluish green ball of light, and the atmosphere was so razor thin. If I looked at it edge on, it looked like it almost didn't even exist. And it just felt like my first instinct was I want to protect this. Like this place this is my home, and I want to protect it. That was my first instinct, and still, even now, 40 years later, well, 47 from that one, 47 years later, I still feel like I want to protect it. And so, next thing I knew, I remember I was thinking, I'd seen pictures of Mars, I'd seen a picture of Jupiter. I was like, oh, I wonder where they are. Whoop, vision, just like when I came out of my body, same thing. Vision went straight to each one of them, and next thing I knew, I was there. And I wasn't just like moving through space and then I'm there. More like I'm here, then I'm there. That instantaneously. So movement there, you can fly around if you want to. Like I did that in a lot of places in both near death experiences. But if you really just want to go somewhere, you can just focus on where you are, where you want to be, and you're there instantly. There's no passage of time, no distance crossed. It's just instant. And so I managed to visit all the planets, most of the moons in our solar system. And I remember thinking, wow, there's so much more. to this place that I'm in, that my planet is in, than I've ever imagined could be. And I remember that Jupiter and Saturn had so many moons to them. Like at the time, we didn't know how many moons they had. We're still figuring it out. Like Saturn, we know has well over 100. I think Jupiter is well over 60, but we're still figuring out how many moons they actually have. I knew there was more moons than what the current estimates were at that time. Like we were estimating, I don't know, 20 or 30, and I like there's way more than that because I was seeing 20 or 30 just in my visual thinking like I'm so there's more beyond that. So I remember I got all the way out to Pluto and I saw this thing that I did not see again until I think it was 2016 when New Horizons probe went by Pluto. There's a unique heart-shaped feature on the face of Pluto that's white, and it's very, very distinctive, and it's heart-shaped. And I remember seeing this, and Pluto to us was still a blurry ball at that point in history. We had never seen Pluto as it really is. It was New Horizons that gave us that view. And I remember sitting in the middle of this giant white heart and looking back the little tiny pinprick of light way off in the distance that I knew was the sun. And all of a sudden, this ball whoop, came right up to me. And like I said, that ball of light was always with me, and I thought it was the sun. That's the way I thought of it in my first near-death experience. It wasn't until my second one that I realized it was source, and that the source was always with me every second. It didn't matter if I called to it or, or wanted it to be around me. It was around me all the time anyway. Um, it just but I remember it came straight over to me, and so imagine like a big old ball of light with rays going in every direction right over you, and so you're lit up by this light that was all, and this place was suddenly it was dark as midnight dark a minute ago. It suddenly lit up like bright, like the middle of the day, and right at that moment, I felt a voice in my head, and it wasn't my guide. It was my grandmother's voice, and I remember her thought was, "I hope he's okay. I hope he doesn't die." And I remember thinking, that's about me. I need to get back to her. And next thing I knew, I was standing next to her. So I gone from Pluto right back to her, standing next to her in the hallway, both of us looking through the same little rectangular glass window into my hospital room. And my guide, I couldn't see him anymore, but I could hear him still. And he said, "It's time for you to go back." And I said, "Do I really have to? I don't want to, I don't want to leave this place. I love it so much. It's so beautiful here. It's so wonderful. It's so cool. Do I have to go back?" He said, "I'm sorry, but you do. He said, "You have a lot of things you still need to do and a long life to live. And so you'll have to go back into your body." And as soon as he said that, I felt like everything went dark. It was still dark, but I felt again. Like I remember I didn't feel any pain or anything like that on the other side. As soon as I left my body, there was no pain, no suffering, no I need to breathe, nothing like that. But as soon as he said that, I was back in the body, and I remember everything hurt. My body, every inch of my body felt like somebody. It felt like somebody. I've described it to people. I said, imagine going to every beautiful place you've ever been to, every place you've ever heard of, every place you've ever seen a photo of, spending a year doing that. And then suddenly somebody crams you into this little 2 foot metal box with cattle prods on every side of it, all like, shooting pain into you from every direction. And then they throw that box into the deepest, darkest, nastiest sewer on the planet. That's what it's like coming back from a near death experience. There's no comparison.
Wow. Okay, so first of all, This is your short experience. You've been talking for 50 minutes. Let me tell you, I'm just like, this is incredible.
It's like hard to stop.
I love this so much. So, one of the things that is the most unique about this is that you said when you came back, you didn't have any memories for months. Yet, for 50 minutes, you have delighted us with detail after detail after detail of this experience you had at the age of 7 many, many years ago. So the first question I'd like you to speak to is, why do you think that this is so vivid after so much time when you lost all of that capacity that most people would assume you would have needed to be able to hold on to something like this?
Well, I will tell you this much. First of all, after my second near-death experience, I directly requested to return with all of my memories, knowledge, and information that I gained during both of my experiences, because I knew that was part of why I returned. I needed that information to help people. But beyond that, first of all, near-death experiences are so much more real than anything here, which I know I've heard a lot of people describe. But the memories of that are perfect in every tiny detail. I can remember, like, and I'll give you an example. My memory is worse than most because I suffered from bullying from age 7 to 16. I suffered 15 brain injuries during that period of time. I've had three more recently between 2017 and now, so 18 total. I have what's called CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. That was diagnosed in 2017 and downgraded in 2021. So my memory below the age of 16, except for the most severe traumas like my spine injury, the brain injuries, and a couple other things, is a complete blank. I can't remember a single thing from the first 16 years of my life. But you know what I remember every single detail of? Those two near death experiences. Every last bit of it. And that's
Wow.
what I say, like that's a difference. How like most people have these experience who have these experiences have at least some memories of their childhood. I have nothing, and I don't know. I know that that was part of my plan, and I can get into that later. But there was a reason for everything that I went through. But I mean, to have no memory at all of hardly anything except the most traumatic events in my life or these experiences. Like that's all I remember for the 16 years of my life. That should
Wow.
tell you exactly how detailed and memorable these things are. Where I can remember every detail of them, but I can't remember even the most basic detail of anything else for 16 years.
Crazy. Andrew, it's so crazy. So, the life review, I want to ask you something. You didn't touch on this. And if you're okay with it, because I'm sure you
Oh,
experienced
ask
it.
whatever you want.
So, you just mentioned that you had been bullied from the age of 7 to 14. So,
Right.
you were being bullied when you had this near death experience. You were not, it was after
Not
that.
yet. It
Not yet.
started,
Okay.
and the reason why, in the first near-death experience, I was given a timeline of events that was going to happen in my life, because that's why I say like the first one was more of a personal experience, whereas the second one was more of a universal experience.
Like
And
universal meaning information to bring back and to share with the world as
with other
opposed to
people, whereas the
this
first one was
one's
more
about
about
me.
my life and what's happening to me,
Yeah.
and or
Okay.
what's going to happen to me, I should say.
Right.
I was given a timeline of events, and they gave me this thing partly so that I could verify for myself that what I had seen and experienced was real, because I spent most of 20 years not knowing, not knowing what to think about this. I had nobody else to go to. My grandmother was the only person who believed me. My family, my friends, people at church, kids at school, teachers, nobody believed me for almost 20 years. It wasn't until I started traveling around talking to people in 1994, 16 years later, after that first one happened, That's when I started meeting people who had experiences like mine, and started putting together, I'm not alone anymore. But it took that long. So um so yeah, so I was given this timeline, both so I would know what was coming, and so I could verify it. Like it was told about the bullying, I was told about the injuries I would suffer as a result of that, other injuries that I would sustain, um, the the CTE. I was told everything, all the major events, that things that were going to happen to me in my life. I was given, and basically I've ticked off almost every one of them, except for the very last few.
Well,
And
can
one
I
of those
ask
is
you
death.
then? I want to ask you, of those events that you had, you were shown all these major events that were coming. So as a human, what percentage of our lives do you think is predestined, set in stone, this is going to happen, versus it unfolds in these different ways with different choices that we make?
I'd say 90-10, as far as that 90%, 10%. There's always free will. Every being has free will on this side and the other side, and that affects what happens to you, how long things take. Our collective free will as a species affects the development of our species, how we evolve. Like there's a plan for our species as far as the future goes. How long that process takes is going to depend on our free will too. So we know there are things that are going to happen regardless, but when they happen, how long they take to happen, that's the part that's kind of up in the air.
The 10%, the
The
rest of it,
10%.
most of it. Okay.
So it's
So
predetermined for the most part.
do you think that you were a part of the decision making of what things you were going to experience, the bullying, the head injuries, the disease?
All of
We're
it.
on single camera right now and he's nodding his head, but yes, yeah, and yeah, speak to that. Go ahead.
I was part of every single bit of it, because just as a quick aside, and I can delve into this more because I had a separate life review in my second near death experience that explained the why, because I didn't ask that question in my first near death experience. But um, in one of my previous lifetimes, my second, not the first one in Switzerland, but the one after that, which took place in New York, I harmed a lot of people, hundreds of families. And the worst part was the kids. And I had to see this, not just when after that lifetime, I had to see it again in the separate life review when I saw those three lifetimes that led up to this one. And so I was supposed to help people with the gifts that I was given in that particular lifetime, but I let my ego and narcissism and everything else get in the way. And this is where the whole free will thing comes in. I made different choices and veered off of my intended life path. So that's where free will can affect what you experience. Like if we followed what we intended when we came into each life, we would never have a bad life ever. We only have a bad life for two reasons. One, we veer off our intended life path, or we're paying for doing so. And paying for, I don't say in a way like we're being punished or some being has that out for us. That's not even close to being the case. God, source, whatever you want to call that being, is unconditional love. You do not have to do a single thing to earn this being's love. You don't have to be anything to earn this being's love. It's automatic. You are, it's not even like a parent child relationship, because parents can be nasty to their kids just as much as anybody else. In fact, more so in some cases. I should know. I'm one of them. Um, but the way God, source, whatever you call it, the way this being feels about us is like we are the greatest, not just us humans, us, all the beings that he has ever created, everything that he's created. He loves everything to the nth degree. And there is nothing that any being or any life form, any type of life in the universe can do to not be loved by this being. So there is no hell for those who think there is, and you're wrong. Sorry. Don't want to dispel anybody's
I'm laughing
belief
at the way that
system.
you said that.
It's like I've had so many people come to me online, especially, and say like, well, my religion says this, my religion says that, my book says this. I'm sorry, I don't care. I don't care what your book says. I don't care what your religion says. It's wrong because I've been there. And I've seen the area that some people who have near death experiences say they've seen hell. I've seen the area that they're referring to as hell. It's not. It looks like it. It feels like it. It's not. Because it's an area where you go by your own choice. And you can leave it just as quickly. You're not put there by any being. There's no eternal punishment. There's no, oh well, you had a bad thought once when you were 7 on a random Saturday night, so you're going to hell for the rest of eternity. No, this being loves us. He loves us so much that it's almost painful to him to see what we do to each other. That's the worst part about it. If there's a hell, it's here. It's not there. It's
Yeah.
not even close to being there.
Yeah.
So
I want to talk about that love really quick because you mentioned
sure.
it and you described it in great detail. And I loved what you said about it. You said that that love was so strong that you couldn't stand to be away from it for even 1 second. And you said, multiply whatever love you've had by infinity, which I also love. I too, Andrew, have been on the other side and have experienced that love. And
And you know,
and I feel like I'm using hyperbole when I'm describing it because I'll say things that sound ridiculous, like the energy of love from this being is like taking the sun times a billion. And I can't even conceive of the number a billion,
yeah,
not really.
exactly.
Not really. And I'm understating it when I say that. So I want to
Yeah,
ask you a very specific question.
sure.
Being on the other side and having the experiences that I have are different than yours. But when I have been on the other side, I haven't been around the source to feel the love from the source. I have been that love.
Mm.
And that love is stronger than anything I could ever describe. I love your times infinity.
Yeah,
And the reason that I think when you say that the source loves all of us so much that there's nothing you couldn't do is because the biggest illusion is that you are you and I am me. And we are just source as a teeny tiny little fractal piece
yeah.
pretending to be Andrew, pretending to be Lori to have the experience. How
They're
could you
pretending to be
not?
separate.
Right, right. Pretending to be something that we aren't when we are God. How could you not love yourself in all forms of whatever you experience? So I'd love for you to speak to that if you have any
Right.
reference to speak to
Oh,
it.
absolutely. Like I said, it's we have this illusion, and I will say that humanity as a whole has to go through a transition phase that all species go through at some point in their evolution, and that part of that transition phase is letting go of the old mindset of I am a separate individual being. What happens to me only happens to me and no one else. That is the mindset we do almost everything with. If you think about, you look around at how we treat each other. It's well, who cares about those people over there? I want a lot of money, so I don't care if they suffer because of it. I don't care if they don't have medical care. I don't care if they don't have a place to live. I have my mansions and my boats and my billions of dollars. And it's that mentality is what is our greatest failing as a species, our greatest sickness. It's literally a disease to think of ourselves as a separate being that is cut off from source, God, whatever you want to call it, or from each other. We are connected to every being in the universe. and every life in the universe. Doesn't matter where it is. Like I said, those filaments that I saw, the purple pink filaments, they are connected to everything, everywhere. So this whole idea that we are separate beings is a fallacy. It's the ultimate fallacy. It's the one we have to let go of. And this is part of why people like yourself and I are sent back, is to not only help people understand what death really is and what the other side really is, but that we are connected to each other in such an intimate way. And that if we don't start thinking like that and helping each other as we're meant to, because we're put here on this earth and on every planet that beings live on to help each other, to, because whatever your areas you're weak in, someone else is strong in, and that's where you get together and you help each other through that. And what you're strong in, someone else is weak in. So we're all meant to help each other. And so this whole idea that we're separate, that we are cut off, like not only aren't we cut off, we could not be cut off from this being who created us, because we are part of it. It's like if you could imagine every cell in your body is a being, and you take those little cells out and you send them in every direction. Do you love that cell that you're sending out any less than the ones that you keep here? No, it's part of you. So that's how this being feels about us and how we should feel about each other. And the more evolved the being becomes, the more they realize that. That's why, more evolved species, they're not about like what country are you from, or what city are you from, what species, like what race are you, what sex are you. Nobody cares. They're all the same. They're all in it together. Whatever helps one helps all.
Yeah.
And that's the way we're headed as a species eventually.
Thank
But
God.
yeah, oh man,
Thank you for that explanation.
after I saw that, especially after the last 10 years of like, thank God I saw what I saw, because I wouldn't be able to survive this, what's been going on, especially in this country for the last 10 years. Like,
That's why I
it's
don't
a
watch
shame.
it. I don't watch any of the news because
I don't either. I can't.
you can't. You can't. Okay, so this is amazing, but I would imagine there are a lot of people watching who would love to connect with you. I
Hmm.
mentioned at the beginning that I know you because of my friend Ned, and I know that you're a moderator on that Facebook group for near-death experiencers. So why don't you tell people about that group and then how they can connect with you?
Okay, so this group, first of all, it's the biggest near-death experience group in the world, which I was not aware of. And even when I first joined it, Ned is the one who told me about it. We have about 600,000 members now across the world.
I think it's
Um,
300,000.
well, those are just near-death experiencers, but there's also curious people. But we have over
Oh.
600,000 members now. We've gone up over 100,000 just since I joined last year.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that. Every time I've talked
Yeah,
to Ned, he always uses the 300,000. That's amazing.
yeah. I think he's just talking about the people who've actually had experiences, because about half the group has had experiences and the other half is not. They're just curious about it, or they have
Sure.
questions, or they're wondering what's going to happen to me, or what's going to happen to my loved ones, like everybody
Right,
does.
right, right, right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, we have over 600,000 members now, and they're from all over the world. I've talked to people from every corner of it. But yeah, I joined in January of last year, so I've been there a year, and I was made a moderator a month after I joined because I had a lot of spare time. I'm partially disabled, unfortunately, but that's also a silver lining. It's given me
By
time to do this
design.
stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I became a moderator, and so I use that group to link up with and help a lot of different people. Um, I've done interviews like this with other people, and people reach out to me through them in comment sections, and I've made a whole lot of new friends through that.
Amazing.
Always open to that. But yeah, if people have questions, they can either it's called near death experiences. Not there's no dash, no, it's all just three separate words: near death experiences. And Ned Matinia is the guy's name who created the group and is the main admin, and then I'm one of the moderators listed. So if you see that, if you see my name as one of the moderators, you're in the right group. So you can either reach out through there, join the group, or if you want to reach out to me straight through Facebook or Messenger, I'm open to that. And then I have email address, which is Duke fan 1971, all one word, at AOL.com. And I'll put it in your comment section. You can put it in your description if you want to.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know how you're getting to all these emails, because we talked about, I think you had 600 in your inbox since the last interview that you did. I don't know how you have time
that's
to
just
do
since
all this.
yesterday.
I know, that's
Yeah,
what I mean. It's crazy. So
yeah, like, well, I get a lot of those are Facebook ones because of the group. Because every time somebody tries to post something or or makes a comment, or I get a
you have to
notification.
moderate it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's all these moderation emails is what I'm getting. So
Okay.
I'm used to that. It doesn't bother me too much. But yeah, people can reach out to me through email, through Facebook Messenger. I have my YouTube channel, but there's not much on it other than my interviews, which I have a playlist for, which I can send to people if they want it. And I love talking to people. So anybody who has questions, comments, even if you disagree with me, even if you've been taught differently and your mind is made up, I get that. I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to convert you. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to answer questions if you have them. And whenever you're
Beautiful.
ready, they say that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
I love
So
it.
the teacher's here.
Well, Andrew, this has been a lot of fun, and
That's right.
I feel so lucky to be able to have a conversation like this with you. But Andrew, I want to thank you for what you are doing to help wake up the collective. It is so needed right now.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's amazing to help people, and it's like I said, it's part of my atonement process. But I would do it even if it wasn't for that. I
believe
love
you.
I love being around people and helping people.
Amazing. And of course, this show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, to listen, and of course, to share these experiences with somebody who needs them. So thank you, everybody, for watching.
Take care, everyone.
There's a reason you found this video. These stories awaken something ancient inside us. Hit subscribe and stay on the path with us.